Hi, this video is the second video in the series of videos about converting measurements. Started with the metrics converting measurements within the metric system. Now we'll begin converting measurements within the US Customary Units of measure. This video may be done in more than one piece because it's rather complicated, and I want to make sure that I go through each kind of measure within the US Customary system of measure. So let's get started. So within the US Customary Unit, the units of measure, again, are for measuring length, capacity, which once again is liquid measure, and weight. So in length, the basic unit is inches. In capacity, the basic unit is ounces. And in fluid ounces, as a matter of fact, fluid ounces, but a lot of times we just call it ounces. And in weight, the basic unit is also ounces. Other units within each category of measure, besides inches, in length we have feet, yards, and miles. Within the capacity or liquid measure, besides fluid ounces, we have cups, pints, quarts, and gallons. Within the measure for weight, we have ounces, pounds, and tons. The equivalences, or the magic numbers, as I'm going to be calling them, are not as easy as they were in the metric system, because remember, in the metric system, everything was based on powers of 10, so the numbers never changed. What changed was where the decimal point is. Well, if you look at all of these conversion factors, all of these equivalencies, you will see that not a single one has a 10 in it anywhere. So you have to memorize all these equivalencies or magic numbers. So most people know that in 1 foot there are 12 inches, especially if you live in the United States. I mean, in 1 yard there are 3 feet, and in 1 mile there are 5,280 feet. This probably is the most difficult one to remember because it's this random number, and we don't usually keep that in our brains. For capacity or liquid measure, a cup is 8 ounces. 1 pint is 2 cups. 1 quart is 2 pints, and 1 gallon is 4 quarts. A lot of people remember that this 2 plus 2 plus 4 equals 8. I don't know if that will help you, but it could. And in weight, you need to know that there are 16 ounces in a pound, and that there are 2,000 pounds in a ton. Okay, so let's get started with how to actually convert. So I already told you that the conversions are more complicated. Okay, so the metrics are not based on powers of 10. I'm sorry, I got the phone rang while I was making the recording. All right, so the first thing that you have to do is you have to memorize what those magic numbers or what those equivalencies are for each type of measure so that you can use them when you're converting. I would say while you're practicing, use the conversion chart that I gave you, but when it comes time for a test, you'll have to have them memorized. So I think after practice, you'll have, you'll have used them enough times that you can remember them, but I would still study them. Secondly, you need to know that if you're converting a larger unit, not a larger number, but a larger unit, like a yard is bigger than a foot. So if you're changing yards into feet, or you're changing pounds into ounces, so a larger unit to a smaller unit, you multiply however many you're asked to change by the magic number. When you're converting a smaller unit, like ounces, into a larger unit, pounds, you divide by the magic number. Okay, so the reason that happens is because if you have, for example, miles, 1 mile is a huge amount. Okay, you know how long it takes to run the mile. Okay, that's a length of time, but you know how many steps you have to take to run the mile. But if you're going to change that mile into feet, it would be like taking one of the wooden rulers, and you know how long the wooden ruler is, and figuring out how many wooden rulers are in that 1 mile. So it's going to take a whole bunch of those wooden rulers to fit in that 1 mile. On the other hand, if you are changing smaller units to larger units, you're going to divide by the magic number. So for example, you know a gallon of milk, or excuse me, you know what a cup of milk looks like. Just picture a coffee cup, a smaller coffee cup, that you could use that as an idea of what a cup of milk looks like. And you want to figure out how many cups it would take to, or how many gallons. So you have a whole bunch of those little cups. So let's say you have 200 cups. So picture 200 coffee cups of milk sitting around, or of coffee. And you want to find out how many gallons of milk. So you're going to start pouring those cups into a gallon container. And it's going to take fewer of those gallon containers than it did of all those coffee cups. So that's the reason you would divide, because you need for the number to get smaller. Okay, so that's the basic idea. So let's do some. And hopefully I'll be able to get them all in this video, but we'll have to see. So let's first start with length. Okay. So remember, our basic units, or our units of measure for length, are inches, feet, yards, and miles. So let's say we have 100 inches. And we want to change that into feet. Equals how many feet? We want to change 100 inches into feet. Okay, so a couple of things that we know. We know that an inch is smaller than a foot, so it's going to take a lot more inches than it will feet to stand for cover the same length. Okay. The second thing that we know is that there are 12 inches in a foot. So the magic number is 12. Okay. So in order to go from inches to feet, we want to go from a small measure to a larger measure. So we're going to divide 100 by 12 by the magic number 12. So we're going to do 100 divided by 12. Now, I'm not going to do the division right here. You're just going to have to trust me that 100 divided by 12 is 8 with a remainder of 4. 8 times 12 is 96. That's a pretty big 8. Let's see if I can make it more like an 8. There we go. With a remainder of 4. Okay? So I'm changing this into feet. So I know I have 8 whole feet, and I have 4/12 of a foot. 4 inches out of 12 inches to make a foot. So that would basically be right, except you can simplify this. So instead of writing 4/12, that is 1/3. So 100 inches is 8 1/3 feet. It's the same as 8 1/3 feet. Okay, so that's one example of changing length within the US Customary system. So I did 100 inches divided by the magic number 12 because inches is smaller than feet. Okay, let's erase that. Let's erase this one. And we will get to do another example within length. Okay. So one that quite a few people got wrong or get wrong on their tests is if I ask you to change something in miles, like 2.4 miles, and I want you to change that into feet. So 2.4 miles, I want to change that into feet. So a mile is a lot bigger than a foot, so I'm going to have to use a lot more feet than I am miles to cover the same distance. So I'm definitely going to multiply. So that's the first thing I need to know. And the second thing that I need to know is I need to know how many feet there are in a mile. Well, if you look back at your chart, or if you look at your chart that I gave you, you will remember that there are 5,280 feet in a mile. So I have to multiply 5,280, and that number's longer, so I'm going to put it on the top. 5,280 times 2.4. Okay. So you notice I didn't line up the decimal points because I don't need to. If you want to, that's up to you, but it complicates your problem. All I have to do is multiply 5,280 times 2.4, and I don't have room there to do it, so I'm just going to use do it off to the side, and ultimately what it turns into is 1. So when you add those two numbers after you do the multiplication, 1, 2, 6, 7, 2, 0. So 1, 2, 6, 7, 2, 0. That's what I get when I add. So then I have to put my decimal point in my answer. Well, there's one number to the right of the decimal point here, so I have to have one number to the right of the decimal point here. So my decimal point goes there. So my final answer for 2.4 miles is 12,672 feet. 12,672 feet. Okay, so we're going to do one more example, and the reason I want to do one more example is because I want to take this same problem, the same idea, and instead of changing 2.4 miles into feet, we're going to change 2.4 miles into yards. Now, there's a slight difficulty here, and the reason that there's a difficulty is because I didn't tell you how many yards are in a mile. I know that a yard is smaller than a mile because a yard looks like a yardstick or a meter stick. The big long things, wooden sticks that the teachers have to draw lines on the board, okay, or to measure things that are bigger than a 12-inch ruler can measure. So I can't change directly into yards unless I want to memorize another number, which I'm not expecting you to do. So the first thing I need to do is change miles into something I do know how to do, which is to change it into feet. So first we're going to change it into feet. We just did that, right? So we're going to take the number of miles and multiply it by 5,280. Okay? And that ended up being 672. So 12,672 feet. And then after I do that, I'm going to change that answer into yards. So to change feet into yards, I need to know that there are 3 feet in every yard. A foot is smaller than a yard, so I'm going to divide this pink answer, 12,672, by the magic number 3. Small to a large, I'm going to divide because it takes fewer yards than it does feet to cover the same amount. And I'm going to divide by 3 because the magic number for yards and feet is 3. So 12,672 feet is the same thing as 4,224 yards. So what we've learned how to do in this video, we've learned what the customary units of measure are, and we've learned to convert within units of length in the US Customary Units. In the next video, we'll talk about how to convert within the capacity units and within the units for weight. Good luck.